FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem is at the center of a firestorm that has rocked Formula One just days before the Miami Grand Prix. In a bold and unprecedented move, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell have publicly rebuked the sport's top official, accusing him of failing to act on long-promised reforms and igniting a political crisis that now threatens the stability of F1 leadership. Their criticism, laser-focused on the lack of progress surrounding changes to Appendix B of the International Sporting Code, has drawn a line in the sand between the drivers and the governing body. This isn't just discontent, it's a rebellion. The Mercedes teammates delivered their statements with unfiltered urgency, calling out what they view as performative governance and empty rhetoric. For fans and insiders alike, the message was clear. The trust between the grid and its regulators is fractured, and the spotlight is now squarely on Ben Sulayem to either deliver reform or risk losing control of the sport's narrative. As the paddock braces for further fallout, the future of FIA leadership hangs precariously in the balance. Responding to the backlash, President Ben Sulayem issued a statement in which he emphasized his openness to constructive feedback and his commitment to continuous improvement. Referencing his own racing background, he argued that he understands the pressures drivers face and reiterated that Appendix B is essential for ensuring fairness and accessibility in motorsport. However, despite this conciliatory tone, many remain skeptical of his intentions, particularly given the timing of his remarks, which come just months before he is expected to defend his presidency in front of the FIA board. The perception that these promises are more about optics than substance has done little to quell concerns. Critics argue that the president is attempting to defuse a political crisis rather than enact genuine reform, casting doubt over the FIA's ability to implement meaningful change under his leadership. The controversy has been further fueled by the recent resignations of two high-ranking FIA officials, Robert Reid, the former vice president, and David Richards, chairman of Motorsport UK. Their departures were reportedly triggered by being excluded from a significant internal meeting due to their refusal to sign a non-disclosure agreement. This meeting, crucially, involved discussions around implementing a mandatory two-stop rule for the Monaco Grand Prix. The exclusion of senior figures from such pivotal decision-making raises serious questions about governance, transparency, and internal cohesion within the FIA. These developments have undermined confidence in the leadership and have sparked renewed concerns that the organization is drifting away from democratic values toward a more authoritarian structure under Ben Sulayem's watch. As a result, the fissures within the governing body are becoming increasingly visible. Lewis Hamilton, a vocal critic of the FIA's direction in recent years, has renewed his opposition to Ben Sulayem's presidency, citing long-standing concerns about a lack of driver influence in shaping the sport's rules. Recalling his symbolic protest at the 2022 Miami GP, where he wore multiple pieces of jewelry to ridicule the FIA's strict enforcement policies, Hamilton asserted that drivers continue to lack representation at the highest levels of the sport. In his words, "We don't hold a power seat at the table," a reality he argues must change. His tension with the FIA has been palpable for some time, most notably when he ignored Ben Sulayem during a public event in Jeddah, declining even basic interaction. These gestures underscore a deteriorating relationship and suggest that trust between the drivers and the FIA president is not only strained, but possibly irreparable. George Russell, who serves as a co-leader of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, GPDA, echoed Hamilton's frustrations by highlighting the disconnection between the FIA's words and actions. While the governing body has publicly acknowledged driver feedback, Russell remains unconvinced that any of it is being taken seriously. "We all consider a lot of things," he said, referring to the long list of promises made by the FIA with little to no follow-through. His comments reflect a growing sentiment among drivers that lip service is being paid to inclusion, while real decisions continue to be made in isolation. The lack of implemented reforms, despite prolonged discussions, points to a governance model that is reactive at best and dismissive at worst. This perception has significantly eroded the credibility of the FIA's leadership in the eyes of its most essential stakeholders, the drivers themselves. Despite the existence of the GPDA, which serves as a union-like body for Formula One drivers, athletes like Russell and Hamilton believe they still have no real influence when it comes to core FIA decisions. Their ability to formally vote on or block regulations remains non-existent. In contrast to other major sports like football or basketball, where players have meaningful representation, Formula One drivers can only voice their suggestions publicly, often to little effect. Russell has repeatedly called for a greater role for the GPDA in FIA proceedings, asserting that drivers, who are intimately familiar with the on-track challenges, are best positioned to guide rules that ensure safety and fairness. His remarks reflect the broader desire for a more collaborative environment, one where the people most impacted by regulations are not left in the dark or used as PR tools. Further credibility issues surfaced with comments from former FIA race director Tim Mayer, who resigned from his post and openly criticized the governing body's direction under Ben Sulayem. Mayer accused the president of running the FIA like a political entity, where dissent is met with either direct or indirect pressure. He specifically mentioned the enforcement of language-related penalties, like banning swearing, as examples of the FIA overreaching and micromanaging driver behavior. While technically allowed under the current code, these rules have made stewards appear overly punitive and removed from the realities of elite racing. Mayer's comments not only validate the concerns raised by Hamilton and Russell, but also signal that discontent within the FIA isn't limited to external voices. It's very much internal as well. The swearing ban, a focal point of Appendix B, has become symbolic of a broader disconnect between FIA policy and driver sentiment. Introduced with the aim of protecting stewards and other FIA personnel, the rule has instead alienated drivers, and even some FIA officials, who argue it creates unnecessary friction and invites ridicule. Critics say the regulation treats drivers as liabilities rather than partners in the sport. Moreover, this approach fosters a culture of fear and censorship, in which even mild emotional reactions on the radio or in press conferences can lead to sanctions. This kind of micromanagement, many believe, stifles the natural charisma and passion that fans connect with, and paints the FIA as out of touch with the modern era of sports. With unrest growing, attention has turned toward potential leadership changes within the FIA, and one name that has emerged is Susie Wolff. Widely respected for her racing experience and efforts to promote diversity in motorsport, Wolff is seen by many as a refreshing and competent alternative. Her credibility was only strengthened after the FIA, under Ben Sulayem, launched and quickly dropped a baseless investigation into her and her husband, Toto Wolff. The incident was widely viewed as politically motivated and indicative of leadership instability. Though Susie Wolff has denied any immediate plans to run for FIA president, her hypothetical candidacy is already being discussed as a much-needed antidote to the current turbulence within the organization. As Formula One heads into a critical part of the season, the question looms: can the FIA weather this growing storm of discontent? The calls for leadership change are growing louder, and drivers like Hamilton and Russell have made it clear that trust in Ben Sulayem's presidency is severely eroded. The governing body must now choose between doubling down on its current path or embracing structural reforms that prioritize collaboration and transparency. If the recent wave of resignations and criticisms is any indication, the pressure may soon become too great to ignore. The fate of the FIA presidency hangs in the balance, and its decision in the coming months may determine the future tone of the relationship between drivers and the sport's governing body.